1984 by George Orwell. Imagine a world where your every thought is monitored, where history is rewritten, and where loving someone could be a crime. This is the world of 1984, perhaps the most prophetic novel ever written. At its heart, this book isn't just about surveillance, it's about the power of language. Orwell introduces concepts like doublethink and newspeak to show how controlling language can control thought. When the party declares war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, they're reconstructing reality. What makes 1984 truly terrifying is its psychological insight. The protagonist Winston Smith's transformation shows how a system can break you. The Room 101 scene reveals a truth everyone has something they fear more than death. The book's banning worldwide reveals its universal truth. When Orwell writes about the Ministry of Truth rewriting history, he's describing something that happens in every society. The power structures fear being exposed. Most chillingly, 1984 predicted our current relationship with truth. The party's slogan about controlling the past and future perfectly describes today's battles. The telescreen has become our smartphones, and surveillance has become our social media. Modern readers might find that the book's most disturbing aspect isn't the surveillance, it's the suggestion that humanity might embrace totalitarianism. As O'Brien says, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. This isn't just a story about an affair, it's a revolutionary manifesto about human connection. Lawrence wrote this novel as he was dying, and it represents his final statement about human vitality. The plot follows Lady Chatterley, whose husband is paralyzed, falling in love with their gamekeeper, Mellors. Beneath this lies a profound criticism of industrial society and class divisions. What made this book scandalous wasn't just its explicit content, it was its suggestion that authentic connection could bridge social classes. The affair represents a rebellion against the industrial capitalist system. The language itself was revolutionary. Lawrence used explicit terms not for shock value, but to reclaim them. He believed society had corrupted one of humanity's most sacred experiences. Most profoundly, the novel argues that our bodies know truths that our minds have forgotten. When Lady Chatterley chooses the physically vital gamekeeper, she's choosing life over sterile abstractions. The book's banning revealed society's deep fear of both sexuality and class disruption. The fact that it remained restricted until 1960 shows how threatening its message remained.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
The Satanic Verses by SALMAN Rushdie. This novel became infamous for what it cost years of hiding for its author, lives of translators, and a deep cultural divide. At its core, the novel explores the immigrant experience and the clash between faith and doubt. Through a complex narrative involving two Indian actors, Rushdie examines identity transformation. The controversial aspects involve dream sequences that reimagine Islamic history. Rushdie, raised Muslim himself, used these elements to explore how revelations come to us. What makes this book profound is its examination of doubt in faith. Through magical realism, Rushdie suggests that questioning is essential to genuine spiritual journey. The violent reaction proved its point. The fatwa against Rushdie revealed a crucial conflict balancing religious respect with artistic freedom. The book became a symbol of this ongoing struggle. Perhaps most importantly, the Satanic verses shows how stories shape reality. When we fight over books, we're fighting over narrative control. The controversy demonstrates this battle continues. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Lolita stands as one of literature's most brilliant paradoxes, a book about moral depravity written in some of the most beautiful prose ever crafted. Through the confessions of Humbert, a middle-aged man obsessed with a 12-year-old girl, Nabokov creates a masterwork about the nature of love, obsession, and self-deception. What makes this book revolutionary is its narrative technique. Humbert is the ultimate unreliable narrator, using his sophisticated wordplay and cultural references to seduce not just Lolita, but the reader as well. We find ourselves caught between the beauty of his language and the horror of his actions, exactly the moral trap Nabokov wanted to create. The genius of Lolita lies in how it forces us to confront our own capacity for rationalization. Humbert presents himself as a tragic romantic hero, but careful readers see through his elaborate justifications to recognize the story of child abuse beneath. The book becomes a study in how evil can disguise itself through art and culture. Most profoundly, Lolita challenges us to think about the relationship between aesthetic and moral beauty. Can something be artistically beautiful while being morally repugnant? Nabokov's prose is so enchanting that we sometimes forget we're reading about a crime, and that forgetting is part of the book's point about how art can be used to mask horror. The novel's banning in various countries reveals society's discomfort not just with its subject matter, but with its implications about human nature. By making us temporarily sympathize with a monster, Nabokov forces us to question our own moral certainties and the way we use sophistication to justify our desires. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. The ultimate irony of Fahrenheit 451 is that a book about book burning was itself burned. Bradbury's masterpiece isn't really about censorship, it's about how mass media and technology can create a society that censors itself through distraction and willing ignorance. The story follows Guy Montag, a fireman who burns books in a future where reading is forbidden. But the genius of Bradbury's vision lies in why books are banned. It wasn't the government that first banned books. People stopped reading them voluntarily, preferring the mindless entertainment of their parlor walls, essentially predicting today's wall-mounted TVs and social media. What makes this book particularly prophetic is its understanding of how technology can destroy human connection. Montag's wife Mildred, constantly immersed in her virtual world, represents our modern addiction to screens. When she attempts suicide but can't remember doing it, we see a chilling portrait of technological dissociation. The most profound aspect of Fahrenheit 451 is its insight into why books matter. Through the character of Clarice and the book people at the end, Bradbury suggests that books aren't just containers of information, they're repositories of human consciousness that teach us how to think deeply and connect with others. Today, when attention spans are shrinking and deep reading is declining, the book's message becomes even more relevant. Bradbury wasn't warning us about government censorship as much as he was warning us about our own willingness to choose emptiness over substance, distraction over thought, and artificial connection over real human contact. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Through letters to God and her sister, Sally's story becomes one of the most powerful testimonies about the journey from oppression to self-realization ever written. Walker's masterpiece isn't just about racism or sexism, it's about how people find their voice when everything in their world conspires to silence them. The novel's genius lies in its structure. Starting with Dear God letters from a barely literate Sally, we witness her gradual awakening through her improving language and expanding consciousness. The transformation of her writing parallels her personal transformation, showing how finding one's voice and finding oneself are inseparable. What makes this book particularly revolutionary is its portrayal of love between women. Through Sally's relationships with Shug Avery and her sister Nettie, Walker shows how women's friendships and love can create spaces of freedom within oppressive systems. The sexual aspects of these relationships, which led to many bannings, are integral to Walker's message about women reclaiming their bodies and spirits. The book's spiritual dimension is often overlooked in controversies about its content. Sally's journey from seeing God as big and old and tall and grey-bearded and white, to understanding God in nature and human connection represents a profound theological statement about finding divinity in human experience rather than patriarchal authority. Most powerfully, The Color Purple demonstrates how individual liberation connects to collective liberation. As Seeley finds her voice, she helps others find theirs. Her economic independence through pants making becomes a symbol of how creativity and practical skills can lead to freedom. The purple field that Shug describes becomes a metaphor for how recognizing beauty in the world is itself an act of resistance. Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. Miller's groundbreaking work isn't just a sexually explicit novel, it's a radical reimagining of what literature could be. Written as a semi-autobiographical account of his life as a struggling writer in Paris, the book breaks nearly every convention of traditional narrative to capture the raw experience of being alive. What makes this work revolutionary is its absolute honesty. Miller strips away all pretense, writing about poverty, sex, art, and human relationships with a frankness that shocked society. But beneath the scandal of its explicit content lies a profound philosophical statement about authenticity. Miller suggests that true art can only come from embracing life in all its messy, uncomfortable reality. The stream of consciousness style isn't just experimental writing, it's an attempt to capture consciousness itself. Miller moves between present experiences, memories, philosophical reflections, and raw emotional outbursts, creating a literary form that mirrors the actual flow of human thought and experience. Most profoundly, Tropic of Cancer challenges our entire concept of what makes something obscene. Miller argues that the real obscenity isn't in explicit sexual content, but in the societal hypocrisy that forces people to live inauthentic lives. His celebration of life's basest aspects becomes a spiritual statement about finding transcendence through complete acceptance of reality. The book's legal battles in the US ultimately led to a redefinition of obscenity laws, establishing that works of artistic merit couldn't be banned simply for explicit content. This victory wasn't just about freedom of expression, it was about acknowledging that authentic art must be free to explore all aspects of human experience. Animal Farm by George Orwell. This seemingly simple fable about animals taking over a farm reveals itself as one of the most sophisticated political critiques ever written. While it's often read as just an allegory of the Russian Revolution, Animal Farm actually exposes universal truths about how power corrupts and how revolutions can betray their ideals. The genius of the book lies in its accessibility. Through talking animals, Orwell explains complex political processes that might otherwise be difficult to grasp. The transformation of the pigs from revolutionary leaders to oppressors mirrors countless historical examples of how freedom fighters can become tyrants. The character development is brilliant in its subtlety. Napoleon's transformation from revolutionary to dictator happens so gradually that the other animals barely notice it, just as people often fail to notice the erosion of their own freedoms. Meanwhile, Boxer the horse represents how the loyalty and hard work of common people can be exploited by corrupt leaders. The character development is brilliant in its subtlety. Napoleon's transformation from revolutionary to dictator happens so gradually that the other animals barely notice it, just as people often fail to notice the erosion of their own freedoms. Meanwhile, Boxer the horse represents how the loyalty and hard work of common people can be exploited by corrupt leaders. Most disturbingly, Animal Farm shows how people can be made to question their own memories and accept obvious lies. When Squealer convinces the animals that Snowball was always a traitor, we see how historical revisionism works, a lesson particularly relevant in our era of fake news and alternative facts. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Beyond its famous profanity and controversial content, Salinger's masterpiece is actually a profound exploration of authenticity and loss of innocence. Through Holden Caulfield's voice, we hear the universal cry of anyone who has ever felt alienated by society's phoniness. The genius of the novel lies in its narrative voice. Holden's casual, colloquial style masks a deep sophistication in its ability to capture teenage consciousness. His repeated phrases and circular thoughts aren't just stylistic choices, they represent the mental patterns of someone struggling to process trauma and depression. What makes this book revolutionary is its honesty about teenage mental health. Long before society openly discussed such issues, Salinger portrayed a young person's psychological breakdown with remarkable accuracy. Holden's wandering through New York isn't just aimless rebellion, it's a cry for help from someone experiencing a mental health crisis. The title's meaning reveals the book's deepest theme. Holden's fantasy of being the catcher in the rye, saving children from falling off a cliff, represents his desperate desire to protect innocence in a world that seems determined to destroy it. His inability to save his dead brother Ali haunts him, driving his desire to protect others. Most profoundly, the book suggests that growing up isn't about losing innocence, but about finding authentic ways to preserve what matters while accepting necessary change. When Holden watches his sister on the carousel, reaching for the gold ring despite his fears, he begins to understand that risk and growth are inevitable parts of life. Beloved by Toni Morrison. This haunting masterpiece transcends simple categorization as a ghost story or historical novel. Through the tale of Sarah and the ghost of her baby, Morrison excavates the deepest psychological wounds of American slavery and shows how trauma echoes through generations. The genius of Beloved lies in its narrative structure. Like memory itself, the story moves fluidly between past and present, creating a psychological landscape where time isn't linear. This reflects how trauma works. The past isn't really past, but continues to inhabit the present. The ghost of Beloved herself becomes a physical manifestation of this principle. What makes this work revolutionary is its unflinching examination of maternal love under impossible circumstances. Setzi's decision to kill her daughter rather than have her returned to slavery poses devastating questions. Can murder be an act of love? What does it mean to protect your children in a world that seeks to destroy them? These questions remain relevant in discussions of racial injustice today. Morrison's use of language creates a new way of writing about unspeakable experiences. When conventional narrative fails to capture the horror of slavery, she invents new forms of expression. The stream of consciousness sections, particularly Beloved's monologue, create a language for experiences that exist beyond normal human expression. Most profoundly, Beloved explores how communities heal from collective trauma. The character of Denver represents the generation that must integrate these histories into their own identity, while Paul D. shows how even the most wounded souls can find paths to healing through love and connection. Ulysses by James Joyce. Far more than just a controversial book, Ulysses represents nothing less than a complete reinvention of what a novel can be. Through One Day in Dublin, Joyce creates a universal story that contains virtually every aspect of human experience. The book's revolutionary structure, each chapter written in a different literary style, isn't just experimental showmanship. It demonstrates how different modes of language and thought shape our experience of reality. From newspaper headlines to scientific discourse to stream of consciousness, Joyce shows how various forms of language construct different versions of truth. What makes Ulysses profound is its democratic vision of heroism. Leopold Bloom, an ordinary advertising salesman, becomes as epic a hero as Homer's Odysseus. Joyce suggests that everyday life, eating breakfast, going to a funeral, having an argument, contains as much significance as any mythological journey. The book's famous stream of consciousness technique, particularly in Molly Bloom's soliloquy, represents a breakthrough in depicting human consciousness. Joyce shows how our minds actually work not in logical sequences, but in associations, memories, and sensory impressions all mingling together. Most importantly, Ulysses celebrates the full range of human experience, from the sacred to the profane. Its frank depictions of bodily functions and sexual thoughts which led to its banning are part of its larger project of finding beauty and meaning in every aspect of life, even those typically considered vulgar or low.